My name is Denny Hyslip. I was born in Marianna, Arkansas in 1952. My father was a sharecropper and my mother worked in the home, so we lived out on the farm. Well, I went to school in Marianna. It was a very poor area in the Delta. The primary source of income were farms, cotton crops, soybean crops, and later on some rice crops. So it was just primarily farms.
How did you end up in Washington County?
Well, when I left Marianna to go to college, I went to Henderson State College in Arkadelphia, got a BSc degree in education, and then I left Arkadelphia and went to Fayetteville to law school.
What was that like back then when you went to law school? And then what did you do next?
Well, when I went to law school, it was very difficult, very technical. There was a lot of reading involved, just a lot of hard work. It was seemed like a full-time job. Well, when I got out of law school, I went back to Arkadelphia where I studied for the bar exam. I took it and passed, and then I got a job in Fort Smith at the prosecutor's office, working primarily in the child support division. I worked there for approximately 15 months, and then an opening came up here at the public defender's office. So I moved to Fayetteville, got a place to live. There was one other public defender in the office, and I was his deputy. So we had approximately 35 to 40 criminal defendants in circuit court. There was also juvenile court, which maybe had 10 to 15 defendants, and district court, which probably had 20 defendants at that time. And we had about 3 capital murder cases going on. And my boss, the chief public defender, was primarily working on those, and I was handling the rest of the cases.
Tell me about your boss at that time. Who was the boss and what was he like?
His name was Michael Dabney. He was very good. He taught me a lot. He was very hands-on. We handled cases together. We tried cases together. It was very enjoyable.
Compare then to now as far as the caseload.
Well, as I told you what the caseload was then, today it's we have approximately a little over 1,000 cases set for trial in circuit court. Felony cases, we have about 190 juvenile court cases, almost 600 district court cases, and about 60 probate cases. We have 10 attorneys handling the felonies in circuit court. We have 1 full-time attorney in district court and 1 part-time attorney in district court. We have a full-time attorney in juvenile court and a full-time attorney in drug court and a part-time attorney in drug court.
For someone who doesn't know, what is the public defender's office and why is it important?
We are here primarily to serve the criminal indigents, in other words, poor people who are charged with serious criminal offenses, as guaranteed by the 6th Amendment and U.S. versus Gideon, a Supreme Court case. We are appointed and funded primarily by the state, along with the county. The county is responsible for the maintenance and operation of the office. The state provides 8 full-time attorneys and 2 full-time secretaries.
How important is this defense to people? If they didn't have it, what would happen?
Well, they absolutely have to have it. It's guaranteed to them by the Constitution. If we did not have a public defender's office and did not until 1974, attorneys were just appointed by the judges at random. They were called upon simply if they were sitting in the courtroom on another case, or they were called on the telephone and just told that we have a client here and you are representing them. So that obviously was not popular with the private bar. So they're somewhat pleased to have a public defender's office.
Talk about some of the cases that you worked that stand out and that are the most memorable maybe over the years.
Well, one of the first cases when I got here was James Ray Renton, who was charged with murdering a policeman in Springdale, John Hussey. It was a capital murder case, and the prosecutor, Kim Smith, at the time was seeking the death penalty. That was a very publicized case. He was, I think, arrested in 1979. He had been on the run for about 5 years. He was charged along with 3 other individuals with kidnapping Officer Halsey and taking him out to Weddington and shooting him out there. There was also a lady, Shirley Marie Curry, who was charged with murdering a number of her children following a custody dispute, which was, again, a very well publicized case. Both she and Mr. Renton got life without parole. I represented a defendant here named Michael Fitzhugh, which was a murder in the first degree case. He was charged with killing a lady with a hammer. We alleged a mental disease defense due to the crime scene being as it was, with her covered in Visqueen and a Bible laid out at the end of her bed and a cross placed on her. He again was found guilty and given a life sentence. Those 3 are probably the most prominent ones that I remember.
Who are some of the judges that you remember over the years that stand out, and what were they like?
Well, Judge Gibson had just gotten elected when I started in 1979. He was a very good judge, very intelligent. I would say that he was extremely helpful to me. I was a new lawyer, not very well experienced, and he taught me a lot. He was very patient with me, and I obviously think a whole lot of him. Judge Paul Jamison was another judge I tried a number of cases in front of. He was very much judge-like. He again, I felt that he was a friend to me and helped me in my growing up as a lawyer.
What about some of the more recent judges that you can remember?
Well, Judge Story, of course, was here for a long time. Judge Story had been a good friend of mine for some time before he got elected. He was a very stern judge, very deliberate, I think, in his decisions. He was a good judge, but a tough judge. And my clients realized that as well. And I think that was a big asset in moving the cases along because they did fear him. Judge Lindsay is now the circuit judge who handles approximately 75% of the cases. Judge Taylor handles approximately 25%. Judge Lindsay is also a very intelligent judge. He does a good job. He's a little more, I would call, laid back in his approach. He lets us try our cases and argue our motions, and he's good about letting us make a record. But again, a very good judge. We've been fortunate here in Washington County, I think, with the judges that we've had over the years. And that's what's been able for me to stay at this job for as long as I have, I think, is the people that I've been able to work with and work for.
Who are some of your top deputies and other defenders here that you we want to shout out? I know you got a lot over the years, but who are some maybe that stand out?
Well, Mary Ann Hudson was my chief deputy for a good number of years. She has since retired and now has just reopened a private practice. But she was with me for about 16 or 17 years, and then she became the public defender who ran the Northwest Arkansas Conflicts Unit. I've had Casey Jones, who is now a district court judge, John Threed, who is a circuit court judge, and some other excellent attorneys, Tim Buckley and Kent McLemore, Rusty Hudson, just to name a few.
What was John Threet like as a public defender, and how long did he do it?
He was here for approximately a year. He handled juvenile court. He was much like he is as a judge. He's kind of a happy-go-lucky sort of person. As he likes to tell the story, his grandfather was my pastor when I was a child in Marianna, and we actually went to church together, unbeknownst to both of us for some period of time. But he did a great job as a public defender, and he, of course, was an excellent prosecutor and prosecuted a number of cases that I tried, one being a death penalty, a gentleman named Gregory DeKay, who is now on death row. But we've always been able to maintain a friendship and been cordial to each other and had a good working relationship. As we have with all the prosecutors, I think, over the years, that's been one good thing about working here, is the fact that we've had such a good working relationship with the prosecutors. You know, not only do we work together, but we are also, I think, friends for the most part.
Tell me about drug court, and how has this maybe helped lighten the load for the courts and the jails?
Actually, Christy Beaumont is the drug court judge who was also a public defender in my office and who did an excellent job as well. We have about 500 open cases in drug court right now. I think it's a good program. The recidivism rate is much lower than with our normal cases. I know she has a lot of programs available to assist with those folks who are, for the most part, drug addicts. You know, they're not the upper level dealers, but more so addicts who need treatment and to maybe be given a second or third chance. So drug court is working out real well and probably needs to be expanded, to be honest.
What about some of the attorneys in the county? Who are some of the, I know that you wouldn't really go up against them as public defender, but who are some, we're also interviewing some of the lawyers and that use the courthouse. Who are some of the ones that stand out for you as maybe some of the top lawyers in the county?
Well, again, Kent McLemore is a very good attorney. He tries some capital murder cases, death penalty cases, as well as Joel Huggins from Springdale. One of my old clerks, Drew Ledbetter, tries a lot of death penalty cases and does a very good job. And there are many others who also do a good job.
What are some of the ways that your office has, in the way you serve the public, what's some of the ways it's changed since you started here in '79?
Well, for one thing, the population here in Northwest Arkansas has, I would say, at least more than doubled since I started working here, and the changes have come by ways of, I think, the way the drug increase has come. We have a lot of methamphetamine in this area, and it's, I would not be afraid to say, the worst thing I've ever seen. Back in the early days in the 80s, we had some LSD, some heroin, mostly some small amounts of marijuana. But the methamphetamine has just surpassed anything I have ever seen. And I would venture to say 75% of my cases are somehow methamphetamine involved, whether it be a theft or a forgery, a burglary, or just a simple drug case. And we have a great deal of just a simple possession of drugs, people being pulled over for brake lights out or speeding or whatever, and they will have methamphetamine in their cars. A great number of them. I think we do a great service to the community simply because we handle such a great number of the criminal cases that flow through the criminal justice system. I would venture to say we handle approximately 90% of all the criminal cases. And as the population here grows, the crime grows, our case number grows, and the jail population grows. So it kind of all blends together.
What percentage of cases that are charged end up going to the public defender's office?
Probably 90% of all criminal cases that are charged end up in the public defender's office. We handle arraignments 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and we also do all the 8.1 cases, which are the initial appearance before the courts. And I'm sure we get probably 90% of all those cases. 75–80% of those cases are drug cases.
So they just don't have any money and they end up having to turn to public defense?
That's right.
I mean, obviously you have a challenge with the caseload. What are the challenges facing this office in the future? Whoever takes over next, what will they face?
Well, I think the same thing is an increasing population, an increase in crime, and unless something changes, an increase in the drug cases. Treatments is good, but there are only so many options for treatment. Drug courts maybe need to be expanded, maybe more mental health facilities. We just opened here in the county a crisis stabilization unit last week, which should be of some assistance to help those who are mentally ill that are out on the streets and get picked up. It's an alternative to taking them to jail. They can go to the stabilization unit and stay 3 days and get leveled out on their medications. But just for the future, I don't know what the future holds. Again, if the population continues to grow, the level of crimes are going to continue to grow also. So it's just going to be, we're going to be adding more prosecutors and more public defenders and more judges, and we're getting one more judge in 2021. So it'll just be an increase in services.
If somebody who never been to Washington County, maybe you met and they said, Denny, tell me about Washington County. What's Washington County like? What would you tell them?
I would tell them it's a great place to live and grow and raise a family. I of course see the crime aspect of it, but that's not all there is to it. There's a lot of things that Washington County has to offer. They have arts, they have trails and lakes and mountains, and it's a beautiful place. And I think the biggest asset is the people who live here. The people that live here primarily are good people and solid citizens, and they believe in the community, and they're considerate and passionate, and have made good friends.
Finish this sentence for me. My favorite thing about Washington County is?
My favorite thing about Washington County is the people who live here. I like people, and the people here are, again, primarily good people. And it's been a pleasure being around them for the most part. And they're good, solid citizens who believe in having a good community and